The cafe fell silent when the tall man in the black suit walked in. His eyes were cold, sharp like a blade, and the air in the room seemed to tighten around him. The waitress froze mid-step, her tray trembling in her hand. Everyone could feel something was about to happen, but no one could guess what. He didn't look like someone who belonged there. His car, a sleek black Mercedes, was still parked outside, its engine humming softly. He walked straight toward the small table by the window, where a little black girl sat alone, her stomach growling softly, her eyes red from trying not to cry. "Sweetheart," the man said quietly, kneeling beside her. "Did someone hurt you?" The girl didn't speak. She just looked at him, then at the waitress standing a few feet away, her lips pressed tight with guilt. The man's jaw tightened. "You ignored my daughter?" he said, his voice low but heavy. The waitress tried to speak, but no words came out. Every customer turned to look. No one dared to move. No one dared to breathe. The man rose to his full height, towering over her. "You had no idea who you were talking to," he said slowly. The waitress blinked, realizing too late that something was terribly, terribly wrong. And then, the door creaked open again, and everyone's eyes darted toward it. Here we tell stories of strength, love, and redemption, where every struggle hides a deeper meaning. Stay inspired and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories. That morning had started like any other in the small town of Brooksville. The sun was barely up, the streets quiet, and the smell of fresh bread drifted out of Martha's Corner Cafe. It was the kind of place where locals came for coffee, gossip, and comfort. The waitress, Becky, had been working there for 3 years. She knew every regular, every order, every smile that came through the door. But that day, she was tired, distracted, and in no mood for trouble. The manager had just yelled at her for mixing up a latte. The bills were piling up. Her boyfriend hadn't texted her back in days. So when a small black girl walked into the cafe alone, dressed in a worn yellow hoodie and old sneakers, Becky barely looked up. Excuse me, ma'am?" the girl said softly, standing near the counter. "Can I please get something to eat? Just a sandwich, maybe?" Becky didn't answer. She was too busy wiping down the counter, pretending she didn't hear. The girl's voice was small, polite, but it was easy to ignore. "Please," the girl tried again. "I have a little money." Becky sighed, glancing over her shoulder. "Look, sweetheart, we don't do handouts here, okay? If you can't afford something real, you'll have to go somewhere else." A few heads turned. An older woman sitting by the window frowned at Becky, then at the girl. The girl's lips trembled. I can pay," she whispered, pulling out a few wrinkled dollar bills. Becky frowned. "That's not enough. You can't even buy a coffee with that." She shook her head. "Maybe you should go back home, huh?" The girl lowered her head and walked to a corner table. She sat quietly, staring at her hands. The older woman, Mrs. Whitaker, couldn't stand it. She was a retired teacher, always with a kind smile and warm eyes. She called Becky over and whispered, "You don't treat children like that, Becky. Especially not hungry ones." Becky rolled her eyes. "It's not my fault she came in here with no money. This isn't a charity." Mrs. Whitaker looked toward the girl and sighed. She stood up, walked over, and sat across from her. "Hey there, sweetheart," she said softly. "What's your name?" The girl looked up, hesitant. "My name's Zoe." "Zoe," Mrs. Whitaker repeated with a smile. "That's a beautiful name. Are you okay?" Zoe nodded quickly, even though her eyes said otherwise. Mrs. Whitaker motioned to the waitress. "2 sandwiches and 2 hot chocolates, please." Becky didn't move. "You sure about that?" she said under her breath. "You know she probably—" "Becky," Mrs. Whitaker interrupted gently but firmly. "That's enough." As Becky walked back toward the counter, muttering to herself, Mrs. Whitaker leaned forward. "Where are your parents, honey?" Zoe hesitated. "My dad. He's coming. He just went to talk to someone. He'll be here soon." Mrs. Whitaker smiled softly. "Good. Well, until he comes, you're safe here." But even as she spoke, she noticed the way Becky glanced toward Zoe with irritation, as though the girl was ruining her day just by being there. Minutes passed. The cafe filled with chatter again. Someone laughed from another table. But Zoe just sat quietly, her small hands gripping the cup Mrs. Whitaker had ordered for her. Then Becky returned, setting the tray down with a little too much force. "Here," she said flatly. "Your food." The cup spilled a little, the hot chocolate dripping onto the table. Zoe flinched but said nothing. "Becky!" Mrs. Whittaker exclaimed. "That's enough." But before she could say more, Zoe whispered, "It's okay." She gave a small, tired smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mrs. Whittaker felt her heart ache. She'd taught children for 30 years and knew when a child was used to being treated unfairly. As the girl took a bite, Becky muttered something under her breath. Mrs. Whittaker didn't catch it, but she saw the older man sitting near the door raise an eyebrow. He was a quiet regular, always reading his newspaper, but this time he was watching Becky closely. Outside, a black car pulled into the lot. The engine turned off, and a man in a dark suit stepped out. He was tall, with sharp features and calm, steady eyes. He moved with confidence, the kind of man who never had to say who he was to be noticed. Zoe looked up just then, her eyes brightening. "He's here," she whispered. Mrs. Whittaker turned to look out the window and froze. The door opened. The cafe bell jingled softly. Becky looked up from behind the counter, and froze too. The man's eyes swept across the cafe until they landed on the small girl by the window. "Sweetheart," he said, his voice deep and gentle, "I'm sorry I kept you waiting." Zoe ran into his arms, hugging him tightly. Every eye in the cafe was on them. Becky's face went pale as she realized the mistake she had made. The man turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You ignored my daughter?" he said quietly. The cafe went dead silent. Becky's lips parted, but no sound came out. Mrs. Whittaker stood up slowly. "Sir, please." He raised a hand, not to her but to calm himself. His tone was still even, but the power in it was unmistakable. "Do you have any idea who you just disrespected?" Becky swallowed hard. Her hands shook. I didn't mean to." The man leaned forward slightly. "That little girl was polite, hungry, and alone. You thought she didn't matter." His words hung heavy in the air. The customers sat frozen, feeling the tension rise like a storm about to break. Then, just as Becky opened her mouth to speak, the cafe door opened again. Everyone turned, and when they saw who walked in next, several people gasped. Mrs. Whittaker's hand flew to her mouth. Becky's knees nearly gave out. Because the person standing in the doorway was someone no one expected to see in a small-town cafe. Someone whose face everyone recognized immediately. And before anyone could speak, the man beside Zoe said, "Now maybe you'll understand." The cafe was so silent you could hear the ceiling fan creak. Every eye turned toward the door as the figure stepped in, tall, confident, and unmistakably powerful. People in the small town of Brooksville didn't usually see faces like his up close, only on TV or in glossy magazines. It was Daniel Carter, the tech billionaire everyone had been talking about for months. The man who built companies from scratch, donated millions to schools, and rarely appeared in public. But here he was, standing in a small-town cafe, his eyes locked on Becky, the trembling waitress who had just humiliated his daughter. Mrs. Whittaker froze, hand over her heart. The old man reading his newspaper slowly lowered it, his jaw slack. Even the coffee machine seemed to stop humming. Daniel glanced briefly at Zoe, who clung tightly to his hand, then turned back to Becky. "You see her?" he asked softly, pointing to his daughter. "That's my world right there. My entire world." Becky stuttered. I didn't know, sir. I didn't mean anything by it. I swear I didn't." Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His calm made it worse. "Didn't mean anything? You told her to leave when all she asked for was food." Becky's lip quivered. I thought maybe she did something wrong?" he interrupted sharply. "Like what?" "Being hungry." The entire cafe felt smaller now, the air thicker. Mrs. Whittaker stepped forward slowly. "Mr. Carter," she said carefully, "please, the girl's eaten now. It's over." He turned to her with a faint nod. "Thank you for showing her kindness, ma'am." "You didn't have to, but you did." Mrs. Whittaker smiled weakly. "Sometimes, doing what's right is the easiest thing in the world." Becky couldn't look up. Her hands gripped the counter, knuckles white. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know she was." Daniel's eyes darkened. You shouldn't have to know who someone is to treat them like a person. The words hit like thunder. The cafe owner, Martha, rushed out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She looked at Becky, then at Daniel. Sir, I am so sorry for whatever happened. Becky here needs to learn what respect means, Daniel cut in, his voice still low but firm. Becky turned away, tears forming in her eyes. I swear I didn't mean harm, she murmured, her voice breaking. I just thought. You thought wrong, Martha said quietly, her tone disappointed now. Very wrong. Zoe tugged gently at her father's sleeve. Daddy, can we go? She whispered. I don't want people to stare. He looked down at her, his eyes softening instantly. Of course, sweetheart. We'll go soon. Then he glanced at Mrs. Whittaker again. But not before we thank the woman who saw you when others didn't. Mrs. Whittaker blushed lightly. Oh, I didn't do it for thanks. Daniel smiled faintly. That's exactly why you deserve it. He turned to the counter again, took out his wallet, and placed a $100 bill next to the empty cup. That's for Mrs. Whittaker's kindness, he said. Then he added another. And that one's for Zoe's meal. The cafe was dead silent again. But instead of leaving, Daniel looked straight at Becky. And as for you, he said slowly, I'm not angry. But I hope today stays with you for a long time. Not because of who I am, but because of who she is. Zoe gave Becky a small, uncertain glance before turning away. Daniel reached for his daughter's hand and guided her toward the door. As they stepped out, the sunlight hit them both. Soft, warm, and forgiving. When the door closed, the sound seemed to wake everyone in the cafe from a trance. Conversations broke out in hushed tones. Was that really Daniel Carter? Someone whispered. Yes, another said. I saw him on the news last week. He donated $1 million to rebuild that orphanage in Chicago. Martha stood behind the counter, staring at Becky, disappointment written all over her face. You just embarrassed this whole cafe, she said quietly. Becky wiped her tears with the back of her hand. I didn't know, she muttered again. I thought she was just what? Martha snapped. A child who didn't belong here? Becky shook her head helplessly. No, it's been a rough week. I wasn't thinking. Mrs. Whittaker, who had sat back down, sighed. Becky, it doesn't matter if it's been a rough week. You don't take it out on a kid. You don't know what someone's story is. Maybe she hadn't eaten in days. Maybe that little girl was carrying more pain than you could ever imagine. Becky's lip trembled. I see that now. The cafe door opened again, and everyone turned, startled. It was Daniel. He walked back inside, alone this time. His face was calm, but his eyes were thoughtful. Becky's heart nearly stopped. Sir? Martha asked nervously. Daniel took a deep breath. I came back for one reason, he said. I don't want this place to be remembered for one bad moment. He looked around. How long has this cafe been here? 25 years, Martha replied softly. Then it deserves better than to be known as the place that turned a hungry child away, he said. Becky lowered her head, tears falling silently. Daniel continued. So here's what I'll do. I'll cover every unpaid bill here today. Everyone eats for free. But in return, he paused, glancing at Becky, you start a small kindness jar at the counter. Anyone who wants can drop $1 or $2. And every week, that money goes to feed a child who needs it. No questions asked. The customers looked at each other, touched and amazed. Martha's eyes widened. You'd really do that? Daniel smiled faintly. I just did. He pulled out a stack of cash from his wallet and placed it on the counter. That should start the jar. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, Mrs. Whittaker started clapping. Slow at first, then stronger. Others joined in. Daniel nodded once and turned to leave again. As he stepped out, Becky called softly. Sir? He paused. I'm sorry, she said again, her voice breaking. I was wrong. I'll never treat anyone like that again. He turned, his expression softer now. That's all I needed to hear. And with that he walked out, his car pulling away quietly down the street. Becky stood frozen for a long moment, staring at the kindness jar that now sat in front of her. She reached into her apron pocket, pulled out her tip money for the day, and dropped it inside. The small bell rang gently as the first coin hit the glass. Outside, through the cafe window, she could still see Zoe sitting in the car beside her father, looking out at her with a small smile. Not angry, not bitter, just forgiving. Becky wiped her eyes again. Maybe she couldn't undo what she'd done, but she could start over. And for the first time in a long while, she wanted to. But what none of them knew, not Becky, not Martha, not even Mrs. Whittaker, was that this moment wasn't the end. Because someone had recorded everything on their phone. And by the next morning, the whole world would be talking about the waitress, the little girl, and the man who changed everything. By sunrise the next morning, Martha's Corner Cafe was no longer just a quiet little spot in Brooksville. Overnight, it had become the center of a storm. The video, shaky, only 2 minutes long, had been uploaded by one of the customers who'd been sitting near the window. The caption read, "Waitress ignores hungry black girl." Minutes later, her dad walks in and shocks everyone. It spread like wildfire. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times on Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. By the time Becky arrived for her morning shift, reporters were already standing outside. Cameras flashed as she stepped out of her car, her face pale and tired. Martha met her at the door. "Don't say a word to them," she whispered sharply. "Just come inside." Becky nodded weakly, her hands shaking as she held her apron. She could feel the weight of everyone's eyes, the people she used to serve coffee to, now whispering behind their phones. Inside, the cafe was strangely quiet. Mrs. Whittaker sat at her usual table, her newspaper untouched. She looked up as Becky entered and sighed. "It's everywhere, dear," she said softly. "The whole country's seen it." Becky dropped into a chair, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't even say anything that bad." Mrs. Whittaker frowned. "Sometimes, Becky, it's not about what you say. It's about what you don't do. That little girl was hungry, and you ignored her. That's what people saw." Becky buried her face in her hands. "They're calling me a racist online. My phone's full of messages. People I don't even know." Martha placed a cup of coffee in front of her. "Drink that," she said quietly. "You'll need it." But the moment Becky touched the cup, the cafe door opened again. 2 reporters stepped in, microphones ready. "Are you Becky Thompson?" one asked. "The waitress from the viral video?" Martha stepped forward. "We're not giving interviews," she said firmly. "Please leave." "Ma'am, we just want her side of the story," the reporter pressed. "Everyone's talking about this cafe. Mr. Daniel Carter's team hasn't said anything yet, but—" Becky stood suddenly, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she shouted. "I was just having a bad day. I didn't know who she was." The cafe fell silent again. Mrs. Whittaker shook her head gently. "Becky," she murmured, "you shouldn't be explaining yourself to the world right now. You should be apologizing to the person you hurt." Becky sank back into her seat, tears streaming down her face. "But how do I even find them?" Outside, more cameras were appearing. Cars stopped by the sidewalk. Brooksville had never seen anything like this. Meanwhile, across town, Daniel Carter and Zoe were sitting at their kitchen table. The house was modern but cozy, filled with sunlight and soft colors. Daniel's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. "Dad," Zoe said softly, "are you mad that people are talking about us?" Daniel looked up from his screen and smiled gently. "No, sweetheart. I'm not mad. But sometimes the internet doesn't help. It just makes noise." Zoe nodded. "Do you think the lady feels bad?" He sighed, putting the phone down. "I think she probably feels terrible right now." Zoe took a bite of her cereal, thoughtful. "She looked scared when you talked to her. Maybe she didn't mean it." Daniel's expression softened. His daughter always had the kindest heart. Too kind, sometimes. "You know," he said, "when people do something wrong, they often realize it later. The question is whether they'll learn from it or not." Zoe's eyes brightened. "Can we go see her?" Daniel chuckled. "You want to go back to that cafe?" "Yeah," she said earnestly. "Maybe she just needs someone to say it's okay." Daniel leaned back, thoughtful. His daughter's innocence reminded him of what mattered most. Forgiveness, not fury. Maybe she was right. By noon, the cafe had become busier than ever. People came not for the food but for the story. Some came out of sympathy, others for curiosity. A few even left donations in the kindness jar Daniel had started the day before. It was nearly full now, coins and bills stacked on top of each other. Martha smiled sadly as she emptied it into a small box. If only kindness spread as fast as gossip, she murmured. Mrs. Whittaker nodded. Maybe it just did. Then, a black car pulled up outside again. The same one from yesterday. The chatter inside died instantly. Becky froze where she stood. "Oh no," she whispered. The door opened. Daniel Carter walked in, holding Zoe's hand. Every head turned. Cameras clicked outside the windows, flashes reflecting off the glass. Becky's heart pounded in her chest. "He came back," she whispered. "Oh God, he came back." Daniel walked up to the counter, calm as ever. Zoe smiled shyly at Mrs. Whittaker. "Good afternoon," Daniel said. "We came to check on the kindness jar." Martha smiled nervously. "It's working, sir. People have been generous." "That's good to hear." He glanced around. "And how's everyone treating you today?" Becky stepped forward slowly. Her eyes were red, her voice trembling. "Mr. Carter, I wanted to say I'm sorry. I really am. I've been thinking about what happened. I was wrong." Daniel looked at her for a long moment before answering. "You're human. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after." Zoe tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, can I talk to her?" He nodded. Zoe stepped closer to Becky, her small hand reaching out. "It's okay," she said softly. "I know you didn't mean it." Becky's eyes filled with tears again. She knelt down so she was eye level with Zoe. "You're a very special girl," she whispered. "Thank you." Zoe smiled, then turned to her dad. "Can we eat here today?" Daniel chuckled. "You sure?" She nodded firmly. "Yeah. I want to show everyone that we're not mad anymore." Becky looked at Martha, who gave her a small nod. "Go ahead," she said gently. "Serve them." With trembling hands, Becky took their order. 2 sandwiches and hot chocolates, just like before. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring and emotional stories like this. As she worked, the room felt lighter. Customers watched quietly, some even smiling. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was about healing. When Becky brought the tray to their table, she set it down carefully this time. No spilled cups. No harsh words. Just quiet respect. Daniel looked up at her and said, "Thank you." Becky nodded, whispering, "No, thank you for coming back." Mrs. Whittaker watched from her seat, smiling softly. "Maybe people do change," she said under her breath. The afternoon sun streamed through the cafe windows, casting golden light over everyone. For the first time in 2 days, the cafe felt like itself again. Warm, calm, human. But just as peace began to settle, the bell above the door jingled again. A man in a dark jacket walked in, holding his phone up. He was live streaming. "Guys, I'm at the famous Brooksville Cafe, the one from the viral video," he said loudly, turning the camera toward Daniel and Zoe. "And guess who's here? The billionaire and the waitress. Looks like they made up." Daniel frowned slightly. "Please don't record us," he said calmly. The man laughed nervously. "Oh, come on. The internet's dying to know what's happening next." Martha stepped forward. "Sir, turn that off. This isn't a show." But the man ignored her, still streaming. "They're right here, guys. This is the little girl." Zoe shrank behind her father, uncomfortable. Daniel's jaw tightened. And before anyone could react, the man's phone buzzed, and his face went pale. He looked down, reading the screen. Then in a low voice he muttered, "Oh my God." Everyone froze. "What's wrong?" Martha asked. The man swallowed hard. "They just released another video, and it's about what happened before the cafe." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Before?" The man nodded slowly, his voice trembling. "Yeah. Someone filmed Zoe outside, crying on the sidewalk, before she even came in." The cafe went silent again. Daniel looked down at his daughter, confused and worried. "Zoe," he said softly, "what happened before you went inside?" Zoe's eyes filled with tears. She looked away. And that was when everyone realized there was more to the story than anyone knew. The cafe was silent again, the kind of silence that felt alive, pressing in on everyone. The man with the phone stood frozen, his live stream forgotten. Daniel's voice broke the stillness, calm but laced with something deeper, worry. "Zoe," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "Sweetheart, what happened before you came in yesterday?" Zoe's eyes darted around the cafe. Everyone was staring at her. Mrs. Whittaker, Becky, Martha, even the live streamer who had just turned off his phone. She swallowed hard, twisting her fingers together. I don't want people to be mad," she whispered. Daniel put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "No one's mad, honey. I just need you to tell me the truth." Zoe took a shaky breath. "I was waiting outside for you to finish your meeting. You said you'd be 10 minutes, but I think I got mixed up with the time. I was hungry, so I thought I could wait inside. But," her voice cracked, "a man outside yelled at me." The cafe gasped. Daniel's face tightened. "Someone yelled at you?" Zoe nodded, eyes downcast. "He told me to go away. Said I didn't belong there. He called me names." Becky covered her mouth, horrified. Martha whispered, "Oh dear Lord. Do you remember what he looked like?" Daniel asked softly. Zoe frowned, trying to recall. "He had a gray jacket. And he was drinking coffee from a paper cup. I think he dropped it when he saw me." The live streamer looked down at his phone, scrolling frantically. "It's in the video," he murmured. "I saw it. There's a man in a gray jacket walking past her before she goes inside. He shouts something but the sound's not clear." Daniel's expression darkened. "Play it." The man hesitated, glancing at the people around him. "Play it," Daniel repeated, firmer now. The man pressed play. Everyone gathered around. The video began. Shaky, recorded from across the street. You could see Zoe standing on the sidewalk, clutching her small purse. Then a man in a gray jacket walked by. He looked at her, frowned, then said something harsh. Zoe flinched, stepping back. The man tossed his coffee on the ground, muttered something, and walked away. The sound was faint, but you could make out the words, "Go beg somewhere else." Becky gasped audibly. Mrs. Whittaker's eyes filled with tears. "That poor child." Daniel's hand clenched into a fist. "That's why you were crying when I came," he said softly. "That's why you were so quiet." Zoe nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want you to be mad." Daniel sighed, his heart aching. "Sweetheart, you never have to hide things from me." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight as she sobbed quietly. Across the cafe, Becky stood frozen. "So she was already hurt before she even came inside," she whispered. "And I made it worse." Martha closed her eyes. "This town's changing," she said softly. "And not always for the better." Mrs. Whittaker placed a hand on Becky's shoulder. "But maybe this is how it starts to change back. By people seeing the truth." The live streamer looked around nervously. "Should I post this new video?" Daniel looked up sharply. "No." The man blinked. "But people deserve to know what really happened." Daniel shook his head. "They don't need another story to chew on. They need to learn from the one they already saw." He turned to Becky and Martha. "I don't want this place destroyed by the internet. Mistakes were made, yes, but we fix things by doing better, not by pointing fingers." Becky nodded tearfully. "You're right, sir. I want to help. Anything." Daniel studied her face. "Then help me find the man in that gray jacket. If he lives here, someone must know him." The live streamer spoke up. "I might. That guy looks like Frank Dawson. He hangs around the post office, always yelling at people. Folks say he's been drinking a lot since his wife passed." Martha frowned. "Frank? I've known him for years. He's not a bad man. Just broken." Daniel nodded slowly. "Broken doesn't excuse cruelty." He stood and looked around the cafe. "But maybe instead of hunting him down, we do something different." Becky wiped her tears. "What do you mean?" Daniel glanced at the kindness jar, now nearly full again. That jar started because one person chose to be kind when another wasn't. Maybe now, we use it to start something bigger. A community fund, not just for food, but for second chances. For anyone who's fallen through the cracks. Martha's eyes widened. You mean, help people like Frank? Daniel nodded. Yes. Help people before their pain turns into hate. Mrs. Whitaker smiled softly. That's a beautiful idea. The live streamer looked at Daniel, stunned. You really think people will care enough? Daniel looked toward Zoe, who was wiping her tears with a napkin and trying to smile again. If a little girl can forgive someone who hurt her, he said quietly, then adults have no excuse. Martha picked up the kindness jar and set it on the counter, higher this time. Then that's what we'll do. Brooksville's Kindness Fund. It starts today. Becky nodded firmly. I'll volunteer. Every week. Zoe smiled faintly. Can I help too? Daniel chuckled. You already did, sweetheart. You started all of this. Just then, the door opened again, and everyone turned. It was the man in the gray jacket. The cafe went dead silent once more. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, his eyes red and tired. I saw the videos, he said quietly. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know anyone was recording. I messed up. Zoe stared at him, her tiny frame still. Daniel took a step forward, his voice calm but steady. What you said hurt her. You know that. The man nodded. I do. And I hate myself for it. I've been angry for so long. I don't even know at what anymore. I lost my job, my wife passed, and I take it out on everyone. I'm sorry. Becky exchanged a look with Mrs. Whitaker, both unsure of what to do. Then Zoe surprised everyone. She stepped forward slowly, looking up at the man. It's okay, she said softly. You shouldn't say mean things, but I forgive you. The man blinked, his eyes watering. You forgive me? She nodded. Everyone needs someone to be nice to them sometimes. A hush fell over the room. Even the live streamer lowered his phone, visibly moved. Daniel exhaled deeply, the anger in him slowly fading. Maybe that's where healing starts, he said quietly. With her. The man wiped his face. I'll help too. However I can. Martha smiled sadly. Then it settled. We start over. All of us. Zoe smiled at everyone, then climbed back into her father's arms. See, Daddy? Kindness is contagious. Daniel chuckled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Yeah, he said softly. Looks like it is. The cafe was warm again. Brighter, alive with something new. People began talking softly, some even clapping for Zoe. Mrs. Whitaker sat back, tears glistening in her eyes. That little girl, she whispered, just taught a whole town how to be human again. Outside, the winter sun broke through the clouds. Reporters were still waiting, but they no longer mattered. Inside that small cafe, something bigger was happening. Something no camera could truly capture. And as the kindness jar glimmered in the sunlight, filling once more with quiet generosity, no one realized that this story, the one that began with cruelty, was only just beginning to reach the world in a new way. Because someone else, watching from afar, had seen the video too. And they were about to make a call that would change everything for everyone inside that cafe. The next morning, the sunlight spilled softly through the cafe windows, but Martha's corner didn't feel like the same place anymore. It was warmer, livelier. The scent of fresh coffee and baked muffins filled the air, and laughter drifted between tables. A new sign hung above the counter, hand-painted by one of the regulars. It read, "The Kindness Fund, because everyone deserves a second chance." The story of Zoe, the waitress, and the mysterious man in the cafe had reached more people than anyone expected. But it wasn't the viral clip that mattered anymore. It was what happened afterward. People were sending letters, donations, even toys for local children. Martha and Becky had spent the morning sorting through boxes stacked near the kitchen. Mrs. Whitaker sat at her usual table, folding envelopes for thank you notes. Becky looked up from the pile of letters, shaking her head in disbelief. Martha, look at this. A woman from Seattle sent $100 and said she wanted to thank Zoe for reminding the world to be kind. Martha smiled. That little girl did more in one day than most people do in a lifetime. Becky smiled faintly, her heart still heavy with guilt, but lighter than it had been in weeks. I still can't believe they forgave me. Mrs. Whittaker looked up. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened, dear. But it gives you a chance to write a better ending. Becky nodded. And I'm going to. Just then, the doorbell jingled. Becky turned and froze. Daniel Carter walked in again, Zoe skipping beside him, her yellow hoodie replaced with a pink one. She smiled widely when she saw everyone. Hi, Miss Becky. Hi, Mrs. Whittaker. Becky smiled shyly. Hi, Zoe. You look happy today. I am, Zoe said, grinning. Daddy said we have a surprise. Daniel chuckled. It's true. He turned to Martha. Mind if we sit? Of course not, Martha said warmly. Your family here now. As they sat, the doorbell jingled again, but this time, it wasn't a customer. It was a man in a dark gray suit holding a camera crew behind him. Martha's smile faltered. Can I help you? The man introduced himself. Good morning. My name's Michael Reeves. I'm a producer with Good Morning America. The cafe went quiet. Becky blinked. Wait, the Good Morning America? He nodded. Yes, ma'am. We've been following the story that started here. The viral video, the forgiveness, the kindness fund. It's moved a lot of people. We'd like to feature it on national television. Martha looked stunned. You want to film here? Yes, Michael said. We'd love to interview Mr. Carter, little Zoe, and everyone involved. Becky's face went pale. Everyone. Michael nodded with a polite smile. That includes you, ma'am. America saw the mistake. Now they deserve to see the redemption too. Becky's stomach turned. I don't know if I can do that, she whispered. People still hate me online. I see the comments. Daniel leaned forward, his voice calm. Becky. Listen. The world doesn't change by hiding from its worst moments. It changes when we face them with truth. Becky looked down. But what if they judge me all over again? Zoe reached across the table, her tiny hand covering Becky's. Then I'll tell them you're nice now, she said with a smile. They'll believe me. The cafe melted into soft laughter, the tension breaking for a moment. Michael Reeves smiled. We'll start filming in an hour. Just be yourselves. He left to set up the cameras outside, leaving the cafe buzzing with nervous energy. Becky turned to Martha, panic rising again. I can't do this. What if I say something wrong? What if people think I'm pretending? Mrs. Whittaker spoke up gently. Then speak from the heart, dear. That's what people need to hear. Not perfection, just truth. An hour later, the cafe was transformed. Cameras were set up near the counter. Lights hung from metal stands. Customers whispered quietly from nearby tables. The host of the show, a kind-looking woman named Cheryl, walked in, greeting everyone warmly. We're here to celebrate something special today, she said to the crew. A story about kindness, forgiveness, and change. Daniel sat with Zoe on one side of the table, Becky and Martha on the other. Mrs. Whittaker insisted on standing behind them, her gentle smile steady as ever. Cheryl began the interview with Daniel. Mr. Carter, your daughter's story touched millions. When that video went viral, did you expect it to lead here? Daniel smiled faintly. Not at all. I thought it would just be a moment, a lesson between a father, a child, and a stranger. But Zoe reminded all of us that kindness doesn't need a camera to matter. Cheryl turned to Zoe, her eyes warm. And Zoe, you forgave the people who hurt you. Why? Zoe shrugged with a small grin. Because if you stay mad, your heart feels heavy. But when you forgive, it feels light again. A collective ah rippled through the crew. Even Becky couldn't help but smile through her nerves. Then Cheryl turned to her. Becky, when the world saw that video, you became a symbol of what not to do. How did that feel? Becky swallowed, her throat dry. It was hard, she admitted. Seeing myself like that, cold, dismissive, it made me realize how easy it is to lose your kindness when life feels heavy. But that little girl reminded me that no one's too small to teach you a big lesson. Cheryl smiled. And now, you're helping run the kindness fund, right? Becky nodded. Every week. We've already helped 5 families. One of them was the man who yelled at Zoe outside that day. He's clean now, working again. We check on him every few days. Zoe's face lit up. Mr. Frank. He gave me a bracelet. The whole cafe chuckled softly. Cheryl turned to the camera. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how a simple act of compassion turns strangers into a community. This little cafe in Brooksville is now a symbol of what forgiveness looks like in real life. Applause filled the room. The crew wrapped up the interview, capturing smiles, laughter, and the warmth that filled every corner. But just as the cameras turned off, Daniel's phone buzzed on the table. He frowned and picked it up. A new email notification flashed across the screen. He opened it, and his expression changed instantly. Mr. Carter? Cheryl asked, noticing. Is everything all right? Daniel looked up slowly. I'm not sure. He handed his phone to Martha, who squinted at the screen. It was a message from a law firm in New York. The subject line read, Urgent, ownership claim regarding the Kindness Fund. Martha's eyes widened. What on earth? Daniel took back the phone and read the message aloud. Dear Mr. Carter, we represent an individual who claims to have legal rights to the name and operations of the Kindness Fund. Please cease all public use of the name until ownership is resolved. Becky blinked. Someone's trying to own kindness? Mrs. Whitaker frowned deeply. Oh dear. That's absurd. Daniel's jaw tightened. Not absurd. Greedy. Someone's trying to turn this into business. Cheryl looked at him carefully. What will you do? Daniel's voice was calm but firm. What I always do. Fight for what's right. This fund wasn't built to make money. It was built to make change. Zoe tugged his sleeve, whispering, Daddy, are they trying to steal kindness? Daniel looked down at her and smiled softly. They can't steal kindness, sweetheart. They can only test how strong it is. The cafe fell into tense silence. What had begun as a story about compassion was about to become something much bigger. A battle over the very heart of what it meant to care. And as Daniel looked around the cafe, at Becky, at Martha, at Mrs. Whitaker and his daughter, he knew one thing for sure. The world wasn't done watching them yet. The next morning, dark clouds hung low over Brooksville, mirroring the tension inside Martha's Corner Cafe. The place that once buzzed with laughter now felt heavy with worry. Daniel sat at his usual table with Zoe, a steaming cup of coffee untouched before him. His phone lay on the table, the law firm's email still open. Martha walked over and placed a plate of pancakes in front of Zoe. Here you go, sweetheart. Extra syrup, just like you like it. Zoe smiled brightly. Thank you, Miss Martha. She picked up her fork, but even her cheerful voice couldn't lift the gloom hanging over everyone. Becky stood behind the counter, nervously wiping glasses that were already clean. She couldn't stop glancing at Daniel's phone. Do you think they're serious? She asked finally. I mean, can someone really own something like the Kindness Fund? Daniel sighed. They can try. And if they filed paperwork before we did, it could be messy. Mrs. Whitaker, seated nearby, adjusted her glasses. Messy or not, dear, this isn't just about legal rights. This is about principles. Kindness isn't a brand. It's a way of life. Zoe looked up, curious. What's a principle? Daniel smiled faintly, his voice softening. It's something you believe in so much that you don't change your mind about it, no matter what. Oh, Zoe said thoughtfully, chewing her pancake. Then I think my principle is pancakes for breakfast every day. Everyone chuckled softly, easing the tension a little. But the moment didn't last long. The cafe door jingled, and a tall man in a gray suit entered. He carried a black briefcase and wore a polite but distant smile. Good morning, he said. I'm looking for Mr. Daniel Carter. Daniel stood up cautiously. That's me. The man handed him a sleek white envelope. I'm delivering this on behalf of our client. My name's Richard Blake. I represent the firm of Harlan and Pierce in New York. Daniel frowned, tearing open the envelope. Inside was a formal letter printed on thick paper. Cease and desist notice, it read at the top. Martha gasped. Becky's hand flew to her mouth. Daniel read aloud, You are hereby instructed to stop all fundraising and public activity under the name the Kindness Fund pending further legal review. Failure to comply may result in legal action. He set the paper down slowly. They're not wasting any time. Richard Blake clasped his hands calmly. My client isn't seeking to end your good work. They simply wish to protect their own brand. The name, Kindness Fund, was trademarked 3 months ago. Becky blinked. Trademarked? By who? Richard's polite smile didn't falter. I'm not at liberty to disclose that. Daniel's voice hardened. Let me guess. Someone who saw the story on the news and wanted to profit off it? I couldn't say, Richard replied smoothly. But if you rebrand your charity under a different name, there will be no issue. Zoe's face fell. But Daddy, that's our name. Daniel kneeled beside her, putting a hand on her shoulder. I know, sweetheart. He looked up at Richard. Tell your client this. Kindness doesn't belong to them. And neither does this name. Richard's smile tightened. I'll make note of your response. Good day, Mr. Carter. He turned and walked out, leaving the cafe silent. Becky exhaled shakily. This can't be happening. We just started helping people. What are we supposed to do now? Martha rubbed her forehead. We'll figure it out, honey. Maybe we can just change the name to something similar. Like Kindness Project or Zoe's Fund. Daniel shook his head. If we change the name, we give them exactly what they want. They think kindness can be bought and sold. But this isn't about money. It's about meaning. Mrs. Whitaker nodded in agreement. You're right, dear. You must stand your ground. Daniel took a deep breath, straightening. Then that's what we'll do. Becky looked uneasy. But fighting a law firm costs money. We don't have that kind of money. Martha folded her arms. Then we'll raise it. This cafe was built on people coming together when times were hard. We'll do it again. Zoe's eyes lit up. We can sell cookies. I can help. Everyone smiled, but beneath the warmth, the worry still lingered. A legal fight was more than just fundraising. It was a battle they weren't ready for. That night, after closing, Daniel stayed behind. The cafe was dark except for the dim glow of the neon sign outside. He sat alone at the corner table, laptop open, scrolling through news articles about Harlan and Pierce. The firm had a long history of winning, and of crushing small organizations. He rubbed his eyes, exhaustion setting in. Just as he was about to shut the laptop, an email notification popped up. The sender was anonymous. The subject line read, "You don't know who you're dealing with." Daniel's stomach tightened. He hesitated, then clicked. The message was short. Back off from the Kindness Fund or you'll regret it. Some things are bigger than your little cafe story. No name. No signature. Daniel stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. Whoever this was, they weren't just trying to scare him. They were threatening him. He shut the laptop and looked out the window. The street outside was quiet, but a dark car sat parked across the road, engine idling. A cold chill ran down his spine. The next morning, Martha arrived early and found Daniel asleep at the table, his head resting on his arms. Daniel, she said softly. Honey, go home and get some rest. You've been here all night. He lifted his head slowly. I can't rest, Martha. Someone's threatening us. What do you mean? He opened the laptop and showed her the email. Her face went pale. Oh dear Lord. Before she could say more, Zoe ran in, her backpack bouncing on her shoulders. Daddy, look what I made. She held up a drawing, a colorful picture of the cafe, with smiling faces all around and the words, "The Kindness Fund Forever," written in crayon. Daniel's throat tightened. That's beautiful, sweetheart. Do you like it? She asked, grinning. I love it, he said, hugging her tightly. But as he did, he looked over her shoulder toward the window. The same dark car was parked there again. Martha followed his gaze, frowning. Daniel, maybe you should call the police. He nodded slowly. If they think they can scare us, they don't know who they're dealing with. But even as he said it, a knot of fear grew in his stomach. He'd faced challenges before, but this was different. This wasn't just about kindness anymore. It was about power. And somewhere out there, someone powerful was watching, waiting for the next move. The cafe's bell jingled again, and Becky hurried in, her face pale. "Daniel," she said breathlessly. "You need to see this." She handed him her phone. On the screen was a social media post. A new article with the headline, "Kindness Fund Scandal? Viral Cafe Story Under Legal Fire for Trademark Violation." Daniel's stomach dropped as he read the subheading. Sources claim the organization may have used the name illegally, and that the founders' motives aren't as pure as they seem. Martha gasped. "They're trying to ruin you." Daniel set the phone down, his eyes darkening. Then it's time to find out who's behind this. He turned toward the window, the morning sunlight spilling across the floor, but his mind was already racing. Whoever had started this wasn't going to stop. And before it was over, the kindness that had once brought them together might be the very thing that tore their world apart. Rain poured heavily over Brooksville the next morning, turning the streets into shimmering ribbons of gray. Inside Martha's Corner Cafe, the mood was darker than the weather. The smell of damp air mixed with the rich aroma of coffee, but nobody seemed to notice. The cafe, once a symbol of warmth and community, now buzzed with uneasy whispers. Daniel sat at his usual corner, his phone in hand, scrolling through the new headlines. Every major outlet seemed to be covering the Kindness Fund controversy. Some stories were sympathetic, but others were brutal, calling him a fraud, claiming he used his daughter's innocence for fame and money. Becky approached quietly, setting a fresh cup of coffee in front of him. "You haven't touched your breakfast," she said softly. Daniel didn't look up. "I can't eat right now. They're tearing us apart online." Becky sighed, rubbing her hands together nervously. People always want someone to blame. They don't care about truth, just headlines. Zoe sat on a stool near the counter, drawing on a napkin with her crayons. She was humming softly, trying to pretend she didn't feel the tension. Every few minutes, she'd glance at her dad, sensing something wasn't right. "Daddy," she said finally, tilting her head. "Why are people saying mean things about you?" Daniel forced a small smile. "Sometimes, sweetheart, when people don't understand something good, they try to make it bad." Zoe frowned. "That's not fair." "I know," he said, brushing a hand over her hair. "But we're going to fix it. I promise." Just then the cafe door opened, and a woman in her late 30s entered, shaking off her umbrella. She was tall, wearing a tan trench coat, and had an air of quiet confidence. "Martha's Corner Cafe?" she asked, glancing around. Martha stepped forward. "That's right. Can I help you?" The woman smiled and extended a card. "I'm Claire Jennings. I'm an investigative journalist with the Daily Herald. I'm looking for Mr. Carter." Daniel looked up, wary. "That depends. Are you here to write another hit piece?" Claire shook her head. "No. Actually, I think you've been set up. And I'm here to help you prove it." The cafe went silent. Becky blinked. "Set up? What do you mean?" Claire took a seat, setting her bag down beside her. "I started digging into Harlan and Pierce after I saw your story on Good Morning America. I noticed something strange. The trademark for the Kindness Fund wasn't filed 3 months ago like their lawyer said." Daniel frowned. "It wasn't." She shook her head. "No. It was filed only 3 days before your interview aired. Which means whoever did it was watching, and waiting for your story to blow up before claiming ownership." Martha's eyes widened. "So they're lying." "Exactly," Claire said. "But that's not all. The person listed as the trademark owner is hidden behind a shell company called Bright Edge Holdings. I've been trying to track down who's behind it, and the name that keeps popping up is a wealthy businessman named Vincent Hale." Daniel leaned back, the name unfamiliar but unsettling. "Who is he?" Claire opened her laptop and turned it toward him. On the screen was a photo of a slick-looking man in a navy suit, smiling beside a podium. "Vincent Hale," she explained. "He owns several charity organizations, or at least he used to. Most of them were exposed for financial fraud a few years ago. He disappeared from the public eye for a while, but it seems he's back. And from what I can tell, he's trying to rebuild his reputation by hijacking your movement." Becky's mouth dropped open. "You mean he's stealing our idea to look like a hero?" Claire nodded. "Exactly. He probably figured if he trademarked the name first, He could either shut you down or force you to partner with him. Daniel clenched his fists. That's not happening. I won't let him use what Zoe started for greed. Claire looked impressed. Good. Then you'll need proof, and fast. I can help you with that, but it'll mean going public again. This time on your terms. Martha hesitated. Public? After everything that's already been said. Claire smiled slightly. The only way to fight lies is with truth. If you tell your story again, with real evidence, the public will see what's going on. People want someone genuine to believe in. You just have to give them a reason to trust you again. Daniel looked thoughtful. What do you need from us? I need access to your donation records, Claire said. Bank statements, receipts, anything showing the money's gone where it was supposed to. If you're clean, and I believe you are, that'll be your proof. Becky looked uneasy. And if we're not clean? Daniel shot her a sharp look. What do you mean? She hesitated. When all of this started, before things went viral, I used part of the first donation to fix the cafe's oven. I meant to pay it back. I did, but I never told anyone. The cafe went silent again. Martha turned toward her, shocked. Becky. I know, she said quickly. It was stupid. I was scared we'd lose the business before we even helped anyone. But I replaced it 2 weeks later. Every cent. Daniel exhaled slowly. You should have told us. I was afraid you'd fire me, Becky said, her eyes brimming with tears. Claire closed her laptop. If you repaid the money, you're fine. But we need to be transparent about everything. The media will dig for any excuse to make this look dirty. Becky nodded, wiping her eyes. Then I'll tell the truth. All of it. Just then, Daniel's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Another message. This one was shorter. And far more chilling. Stop digging. You have no idea who you're up against. Daniel's blood ran cold. He showed it to Claire, who frowned. Looks like they know we're on to them. Zoe tugged his sleeve, her little voice cutting through the tension. Daddy. Are we in trouble? Daniel knelt beside her. No, sweetheart. But we have to be brave, okay? Like superheroes. She smiled weakly. Okay. But can superheroes still have pancakes? He chuckled softly. Always. But the laugh faded as he looked toward the window. Outside, through the rain, that same dark car was parked across the street again. Claire followed his gaze. They're watching you. Daniel's voice was steady but cold. Then let them watch. Because I'm not backing down. She nodded. Good. Because if Vincent Hale really is behind this, things are going to get ugly before they get better. Martha crossed her arms. Then we'll face ugly together. Becky added, her voice firm now. Yeah. No one's taking what Zoe started. Daniel smiled faintly. Then it settled. We fight. Thunder rumbled outside, shaking the windows. The storm outside felt like a reflection of what was coming. A battle not just for a name, but for the soul of something pure. As the rain continued to pour, Claire began typing rapidly on her laptop, pulling up documents and tracing digital footprints. Becky brewed another pot of coffee, her hands trembling but determined. And Daniel, watching his daughter laugh softly as she colored another picture, made a silent vow. He wouldn't let greed win. Not this time. But deep down he knew. The storm was only beginning. The next few days were a whirlwind. News cameras camped outside Martha's Corner Cafe. Customers poured in to show support, and the phone never stopped ringing. Reporters wanted interviews, donors wanted answers, and lawyers wanted to talk. The world had turned its attention on a small cafe in Brooksville, and for Daniel Carter, the spotlight had never felt so heavy. Claire Jennings, the journalist who had promised to help, had practically moved into the cafe. Her laptop was always open, screens filled with financial records, trademark filings, and long trails of suspicious corporate documents. She was relentless, but Daniel knew that was exactly what they needed. Here, she said one morning, sliding her laptop across the table. Look at this. On the screen was an internal email from Bright Edge Holdings, the shell company she'd been investigating. The message was short but explosive. Hale wants the Carter story shut down before it reaches Congress. Launch Phase 2 immediately. Daniel frowned. Congress? What are they talking about? Claire leaned back. Apparently, your story's gone beyond just news coverage. There's a senator in Washington who wants to use your kindness fund model as an example of grassroots compassion. He's proposing a bill to support small community funds, something that would cut into people like Vincent Hale's control. Becky blinked. So this isn't just about us? Claire shook her head. No. It's about power. If the public sees that kindness doesn't need billionaires or big corporations, Hale loses influence and money. Martha exhaled slowly, setting down her coffee cup. So that's why he's coming after us. He's scared of being replaced by ordinary people doing good. Daniel nodded grimly. Then we're not just defending a name, we're defending the idea that kindness belongs to everyone. Just then, the cafe door jingled. The bell's soft chime felt oddly sharp in the tense silence. Everyone turned. And there he was. Vincent Hale. He was even more intimidating in person than in the photos. Tall, perfectly groomed, with a smile that didn't reach his cold gray eyes. He was flanked by two men in dark suits. The entire cafe seemed to go quiet as he stepped forward, unbothered by the glares. Martha's Corner Cafe, he said smoothly. So this is where it all began. Daniel stood up, his posture stiff. You've got a lot of nerve showing your face here. Hale smiled faintly. On the contrary, I think it's time we had a civil conversation. Martha stepped protectively beside Daniel. We don't have anything to say to you. Oh, but you do, Hale said, glancing around the cafe. You've built quite the empire here, the humble cafe that captured America's heart. A viral story, a teary-eyed waitress, a sweet little girl. It's perfect. He looked at Zoe, who was sitting quietly with her crayons. Almost too perfect. Daniel's jaw tightened. Don't talk to my daughter. Hale held up his hands in mock surrender. Relax, Mr. Carter. I'm here to offer you a deal. Claire raised an eyebrow. A deal? Yes, Hale said smoothly. You give me the rights to the Kindness Fund, the brand, the name, the outreach, and in return I'll fund your next project. You can keep your cafe, your reputation, even your feel-good story. I'll make sure you're remembered as the man who started it all. Daniel stared at him in disbelief. You want to buy kindness? Hale's smile widened. Let's not make it sound so crass. Think of it as a partnership. I have the resources to scale this idea globally. You have a heartwarming narrative. Together, we could turn this into something enormous. Becky spoke up, her voice trembling with anger. You mean you want to turn it into a business? To make money off it? Hale chuckled. My dear, everything good in this world needs money to survive. Even kindness. Daniel took a slow step forward. You don't understand, Hale. This isn't a brand. It's a movement, built on something you can't fake. For the first time, Hale's smile faltered slightly. You're an idealist, Mr. Carter. That's charming but naive. The world doesn't run on ideals. It runs on control. And right now I have it. He nodded to one of his men, who handed Daniel a thick envelope. Inside were several printed pages, legal documents, contracts, and one final sheet with a number written in bold ink. Martha leaned over his shoulder. Is that a check? Hale nodded. $2 million. Yours, the moment you sign. Becky gasped. $2 million. Zoe looked up from her drawing, blinking. Daddy, is that a lot? Daniel knelt beside her, smiling softly. It's a lot, sweetheart. But some things are worth more. Hale's patience was thinning. Be reasonable, Mr. Carter. Take the offer. The longer you drag this out, the harder I'll make it for you. Daniel stood, his voice firm now. You can keep your money. Kindness isn't for sale. A flicker of annoyance crossed Hale's face. He gathered the envelope slowly. I was hoping we could avoid making enemies. But if that's your choice. Claire cut in sharply. We already know about your shell companies. About the trademark scam. You won't get away with this. Hale's eyes narrowed, his charm evaporating. Be careful, Ms. Jennings. You don't want to end up on the wrong side of a powerful man. She smirked. Funny. That's exactly what I tell men like you. Hale glared at her for a long moment before turning toward the door. This isn't over, Carter. Enjoy your 15 minutes of fame while you still can. He left, his 2 men following him. The cafe stayed silent long after the door closed, the tension thick in the air. Martha was the first to speak. That man gives me chills. Daniel rubbed his temples. He's not going to stop. If we don't act fast, he'll twist the story his way. Claire closed her laptop and stood. Then we fight back publicly. I'll leak the emails, the trademark evidence, everything. But we'll need to do it smart, at the right moment. Becky exhaled. And what if he tries something worse? Claire looked grim. He already has. I traced the fake account spreading rumors about you. They're linked to Bright Edge. He's paying people to ruin your name. Daniel clenched his fists. Then we go live. Tonight. We tell everyone the truth ourselves. Martha frowned. You mean on camera? Yes, Daniel said. On every social platform we have. I'll show them who we really are, who Zoe really is, and what this fund stands for. Becky hesitated. What if he retaliates? He already has, Daniel said softly. But this time, the world will see him for what he is. That night, the cafe lights stayed on long after closing. Daniel stood behind the counter with Zoe beside him, Martha and Becky just off to the side, and Claire recording on her phone. The camera light blinked red. Daniel took a deep breath and began to speak. Good evening. My name is Daniel Carter. Some of you know me as the father from that cafe story that went viral, the one about kindness. But tonight, I'm not here for headlines. I'm here to tell the truth. He paused, glancing at Zoe, who smiled up at him with pure trust. A powerful man has tried to take what my daughter started. He thinks kindness can be trademarked, that compassion can be bought. But he's wrong. What we built came from love, not greed. And no lawyer, no billionaire, and no corporation can own that. Claire panned the camera to the group behind him. Becky spoke next, her voice shaking but strong. I made mistakes. I judged when I should have cared. But this cafe taught me that change starts small, with one act of kindness. And we won't let anyone take that away. When the video ended, Claire uploaded it instantly. Within minutes, notifications exploded across Daniel's phone. Thousands of comments. Shares. Support pouring in from all over the country. Zoe yawned and leaned against her father's side. Did we win, Daddy? He smiled softly. Not yet, sweetheart. But we just made the first move. Outside, across the street, the dark car sat again. Engine running, headlights dim. And in the back seat, Vincent Hale watched the live stream on his phone, his smile gone. This just got personal, he muttered. The storm wasn't over. It was only getting stronger. By the next morning, the internet had exploded. Daniel's heartfelt video had gone viral again. But this time, the message was louder, clearer, and impossible to ignore. The hashtags #kindness can't be bought and #thikafethet fought back were trending across every major platform. News outlets replayed the clip of Daniel and Zoe standing side by side, and people all over the country were rallying behind them. At first, it felt like they had won. Customers lined up around the block, donations poured into the kindness fund, and people started visiting the cafe just to meet the kindness team in person. Reporters camped outside for interviews. The place that once smelled only of coffee and muffins now buzzed with energy, hope, and purpose. But beneath the smiles, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something big. Claire seemed to sense it too. She had barely slept, eyes glued to her laptop as she tracked news coverage and online chatter. He's quiet, she said that morning, scrolling through her feed. Too quiet. Martha frowned. Who? Vincent Hale, Claire replied. A man like him doesn't disappear after being humiliated publicly. He's planning something. Becky was setting down trays of croissants but paused. You think he'll try to sue again? No, Claire said, shaking her head. That'd be too obvious. He's lost control of the narrative. He'll want to shift it back his way. Just then, Zoe ran in from the back room, waving a crayon drawing. Daddy, look. I drew us on TV. Daniel chuckled softly, kneeling to look. The picture showed their little cafe surrounded by hearts and people smiling. That's beautiful, sweetheart. But even as he smiled, he caught sight of something through the cafe window. A black SUV parked across the street. The same one from before. His heart sank. Hale was watching again. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring and emotional stories like this. The cafe was packed by noon. Claire was at her usual table typing furiously. Martha was managing the growing crowd, and Becky was trying to keep up with orders. Daniel moved from table to table, thanking people for their support. That's when a man in a suit approached him. "Mr. Carter?" "Yes," Daniel asked, straightening up. The man flashed a badge. "FBI. I'm Agent Lawson. We need to talk." The entire cafe seemed to freeze for a moment. Claire immediately stood, eyes wide. "What's this about?" Lawson's tone was calm but firm. "We received reports that your charity funds have been involved in fraudulent wire transfers. I'll need you to come with me for questioning." Becky nearly dropped a coffee cup. "What? That's impossible." Daniel blinked in disbelief. "You think I stole from the fund?" "We're not making accusations yet," Lawson said. "We just need to verify a few things. Please come with me." The customers murmured, pulling out their phones to record. Claire quickly stepped between Daniel and the agent. "You can't just take him, he's done nothing wrong." Lawson sighed. "Miss Jennings, I know who you are. This isn't a setup. We have records showing $50,000 transferred from the Kindness Fund to an offshore account under Daniel Carter's name." Daniel's blood ran cold. "That's not me. I've never opened any offshore account." "Then help us clear it up," Lawson said. "The faster we talk, the faster you can come home." Martha's hands trembled as she held Zoe close. "Please don't take him. He didn't do anything wrong." Zoe's lip quivered. "Daddy." Daniel crouched down to her level and forced a small smile. "It's okay, baby. Daddy just needs to go talk to some people. I'll be right back, okay?" Zoe nodded slowly, but tears were already filling her eyes. As the agents led him outside, Claire leaned in close and whispered fiercely, "Don't say a word until I get you a lawyer. This has Hale written all over it." Daniel nodded faintly as they put him in the car. Through the window, he saw Zoe's tiny hand pressed against the glass of the cafe door, watching her father being driven away. Back inside, the cafe buzzed with confusion. Martha locked the doors, and Becky started pacing. "This can't be happening. They think Daniel's a criminal?" Claire slammed her laptop shut. "No, they want people to think that. This is classic corporate sabotage. Hale must have fabricated evidence." Martha frowned. "Can he really do that?" Claire's eyes darkened. "With enough money, he can make anything look real." Becky sat down heavily. "Then what do? "We fight," Claire said. "And fast." She opened her laptop again, typing furiously. Within minutes, she had pulled up banking records, timestamps, and digital logs from the Kindness Fund. "See this," she said, pointing to a string of numbers. "This transfer happened at 3 a.m., from an IP address in New York. Daniel was here, sleeping upstairs in the cafe. I can prove it. But how do we get the FBI to listen?" Martha asked. Claire bit her lip. "We go public again, but this time with hard evidence. If we can prove Hale's behind this, we'll destroy his credibility before he destroys Daniel's." Becky nodded determinedly. "Let's do it." Meanwhile, in a cold interrogation room downtown, Daniel sat across from Agent Lawson. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and a single camera blinked red in the corner. Lawson studied the folder in front of him. "You've got quite the story, Mr. Carter. Viral fame, sudden money flow, public speeches about kindness. But that kind of exposure attracts trouble." Daniel sighed. "You think I did this for money?" Lawson looked up. "Did you?" Daniel leaned forward. "Let me tell you something, Agent. I didn't even know what viral meant until all this started. My daughter and I were just trying to eat lunch that day. We didn't plan for any of this." The agent was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "You know what's strange? That offshore account, the one under your name, was created by someone using your old address in Chicago." Daniel frowned. "Chicago? I haven't lived there in years." "Right," Lawson said. And the documents used your social security number, but not your signature. Whoever did this knows a lot about you. Daniel's pulse quickened. That means it's not random. Someone targeted me. Lawson nodded slowly. That's what it looks like. Before Daniel could respond, there was a knock at the door. Another agent entered and handed Lawson a note. He read it, then raised an eyebrow. What is it? Daniel asked. Lawson looked at him thoughtfully. Your journalist friend, Claire Jennings, just leaked something online. And it's spreading fast. Daniel leaned forward. What did she post? Lawson flipped the paper toward him. An internal email from Vincent Hale's company. It reads, Phase 2 initiated. Financial disruption successful. Next step, discredit the Carter brand before media rally. Daniel's heart pounded. So she found proof. Lawson nodded. If this is authentic, you'll be cleared within hours. But I suggest you stay put until we confirm. For the first time all day, Daniel allowed himself a small, tired smile. Back at the cafe, Claire refreshed the page over and over. The leaked email was everywhere now. Thousands of shares, millions of views. The world knew. Becky leaned over her shoulder, trembling. You think this will save him? Claire nodded. It has to. Just then, the cafe phone rang. Martha answered it cautiously. Hello. Her face went pale. Oh no. Becky rushed over. What happened? Martha whispered. The police, they're saying Daniel's been released, but someone's coming for the cafe. They said we should lock the doors. Claire's heart stopped. Who's coming? Martha swallowed hard. They didn't say. Just that it's urgent. The cafe lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. Zoe's small voice broke the silence. Miss Claire. Why is it dark? Before anyone could answer, the sound of tires screeching echoed outside. Headlights flashed through the windows. 3 black SUVs pulling up fast. Claire's voice dropped to a whisper. He's here. The next storm had arrived. The cafe was plunged into darkness. Only faint moonlight seeped through the front windows, casting long trembling shadows across the tables. The smell of brewed coffee still lingered in the air, a reminder of how normal everything had been just a few hours ago. Now, the same cozy space felt like a trap. Martha's trembling hands found the light switch, but nothing happened. The power's gone, she whispered. Claire moved quickly to the window, peering through the blinds. Her pulse quickened. 3 black SUVs. Same ones that followed Daniel before. Becky's breath hitched. It's him, isn't it? Hale. Claire nodded. He's not even trying to hide anymore. Zoe clung to Martha's leg, her tiny voice shaking. Are they bad people? Martha knelt down, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. No one's going to hurt you, sweetheart. We just need to stay quiet, okay? The engines outside went silent. Doors slammed. Boots crunched against the pavement. Claire ducked behind the counter, pulling out her phone and typing fast. I'm calling the police, she muttered. If Hale tries anything, we'll have proof. Becky grabbed a rolling pin from the kitchen. Proof won't help if he breaks in. Just stay calm, Claire whispered. They can't legally do anything without. Her words stopped when the cafe door swung open. Vincent Hale stepped inside, flanked by 4 men in black coats. He looked almost calm. Too calm. His eyes scanned the cafe before landing on Claire. Well, he said smoothly, it seems we've attracted quite the audience online. Claire stood up slowly. You've crossed a line, Hale. You falsified financial records, tried to frame Daniel, and now you're trespassing. You're done. Hale chuckled. You think the internet can save you? My lawyers can bury your little leak before the hour's out. But I thought I'd come personally, to make you an offer one last time. Martha took a step forward. Get out of my cafe. He smiled faintly. You mean my future franchise location? Once your good friend Daniel is discredited for money laundering, I'll buy this place at half its value. You see, I always win. Becky gritted her teeth. You won't win this time. Oh, Becky, he said almost pityingly. You're just a waitress. You think the world listens to people like you? Before she could answer, a small voice cut through the tension. Stop talking to her like that. Everyone turned. Zoe stood there, her little hands balled into fists, her face trembling with defiance. "You're mean," she said. "You made my daddy cry." For the first time, Hale looked taken aback. "Your daddy?" Claire stepped closer protectively. "You stay away from her." Hale's lips curved into a mocking smile. "Ah yes, the famous child from the viral video. The face of America's kindness campaign. It's almost poetic that she's the reason this all started." Zoe's voice quivered, but she didn't back down. "He told me to always be kind. You should try it." That line, so innocent yet so piercing, hung in the air like a blade. For a moment, even Hale said nothing. Then he sighed and gestured to his men. "Get the computers. Wipe everything. If they won't sign, we'll make sure there's nothing left to fight for." Martha gasped. "You can't do that." One of the men moved toward Claire's laptop, but Becky stepped in front of him, gripping her rolling pin tight. "Touch it and I swear." The man smirked. "Move." Claire's voice cut through the rising panic. "Becky, don't." But Becky swung. The rolling pin connected with a loud crack against the man's arm. He shouted in pain, dropping the tablet he was holding. The cafe erupted into chaos. Martha screamed, pulling Zoe behind the counter. Another man lunged toward Becky, but Claire grabbed a tray and flung it at his face. Dishes shattered across the floor. "Stop!" Hale barked, but no one listened. Claire grabbed Zoe's hand and whispered, "Out the back door, go!" They ran toward the kitchen, but as Claire reached for the exit, the sound of sirens filled the air. Blue and red lights flashed through the cafe windows. Hale froze. His comm mask slipped for the first time. "What the?" Outside, a voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "This is the Brooksville Police Department. Everyone stay where you are." Martha let out a sob of relief. "They're here." Within seconds, officers stormed through the front door, shouting orders. Hale's men raised their hands, backing away slowly. Hale himself tried to regain his composure. "This is a misunderstanding," he began, but the lead officer cut him off. "Vincent Hale, you're under arrest for fraud, witness intimidation, and falsifying federal financial records." The cafe went silent. Hale's face turned pale. "What are you talking about?" The officer held up a document. "We received new evidence from federal investigators 10 minutes ago. Seems your little scheme to frame Daniel Carter backfired." Claire's eyes widened. "Daniel, where is he? Is he okay?" The officer nodded. "He's safe. He's the one who called us." Everyone turned to the doorway, and there he was. Daniel stood in the entrance, still wearing the same shirt from the interrogation room, looking exhausted but unbroken. When Zoe saw him, she screamed with joy. "Daddy!" She ran to him, and he scooped her up into his arms, holding her tight. "I told you I'd come back," he whispered. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "You did." Claire smiled through her exhaustion. "You couldn't have timed that better." Daniel looked around, the shattered dishes, the broken tables, the flashing lights, and then at Hale, who was being handcuffed by officers. "I should have known you'd go this far," he said. Hale's voice was low and bitter. "You think this is over? You embarrassed powerful people, Carter. You've started something you can't control." Daniel stepped closer, eyes steady. "You're right. I did start something. But it's not yours to control. It belongs to everyone who still believes kindness is stronger than greed." Hale sneered as they dragged him out the door, the sirens fading into the distance. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Martha let out a shaky laugh. "Well," she said, looking at the mess, "I guess we'll be needing some new dishes." Becky chuckled weakly. "And maybe a new door." Zoe tugged on Daniel's sleeve. "Daddy, does this mean we won?" Daniel smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Not yet, baby. But we're closer than ever." Claire exhaled deeply, closing her laptop. "We should still expect backlash. Hale's people will try to spin this." Daniel nodded. "Then we'll keep telling the truth. Over and over, until people stop listening to them and start believing in what's real." Martha looked around the cafe, at the customers peeking through the window, at the broken lights, at the little girl still clinging to her father's neck, and smiled through her tears. Kindness may be messy, she said softly, but it always wins in the end. Outside, dawn was breaking. The street glowed with soft orange light as the last police cars drove away. The cafe stood battered but unbroken, a symbol of everything they had fought for. And as the sun rose higher, Daniel knew this wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of something far greater. Because kindness, once awakened, had a way of spreading faster than fear. And this time, it was unstoppable. The sun rose over Brooksville, painting the streets gold. The cafe was quiet for the first time in days. The broken glass had been swept, the overturned tables fixed, and the closed for cleaning sign still hung crookedly on the front door. But inside, the air was heavy with reflection. Daniel sat at one of the corner tables, a mug of untouched coffee in front of him. The world outside had exploded with the story. Billionaire Vincent Hale arrested after trying to frame single father. Every major outlet was running it. The same people who had once doubted him now called him a hero. But Daniel didn't feel like one. He watched Zoe draw quietly at the next table, humming softly as if nothing bad had ever happened. Her resilience was something that never failed to amaze him. She had seen police, threats, chaos. Yet here she was, smiling, sketching hearts and rainbows like the world was perfect. Claire walked in, holding a box of printed documents and her laptop tucked under her arm. "Morning," she said softly. Daniel looked up, managing a tired smile. "Hey." She placed the box on the counter. "The FBI sent these this morning. Official confirmation that you've been cleared. They traced all the fake transfers back to Hale's network. You're free, Daniel." He exhaled, rubbing his forehead. "Free. That's a word I haven't felt in a while." Claire sat across from him. "You should be proud. You took on one of the most powerful men in the country and won." Daniel shook his head. "No, Claire. We won. You, Martha, Becky, everyone who believed in something simple." He looked at Zoe. "And it all started because one little girl wanted to eat pancakes." Claire chuckled softly. "You know, if this ever becomes a movie, that's going to be the title." Daniel smiled faintly, then grew serious. "What happens now?" "The Kindness Fund blew up overnight. We're getting requests from all over the country. Schools, churches, even hospitals asking for help to start their own chapters." "That's amazing," she said. "You should build on that momentum." He sighed. "That's what I'm afraid of. I don't want it to turn into another business." Hale was right about one thing. The bigger it gets, the more control people will want over it. Claire nodded. "Then don't let it become about control. Make it about connection." He raised an eyebrow. "Connection." She leaned forward. "Think about it. Instead of a corporation, make it a community. No CEOs, no shareholders. Just people helping people. You could create a nationwide network that anyone can join. No money involved, just acts of kindness that ripple outwards." Daniel thought about that for a moment. "Like a kindness chain?" "Exactly," she said. "One good deed inspires another. It's harder to corrupt something that's built on everyday people." Zoe looked up from her drawing. "Like when I gave Becky my muffin that day." Claire smiled. "Yes, Zoe. Exactly like that." Daniel chuckled softly. She might be onto something. Maybe the future of kindness isn't in a fund. Maybe it's in a promise. Before Claire could respond, the door opened, and Martha stepped in, wiping her hands on her apron. "Morning, you two. The phones won't stop ringing. Reporters, donors, volunteers, and a news crew wants to film a segment here this afternoon." Daniel groaned. "More cameras." Martha smirked. "Welcome to being famous." Just then, Becky burst through the door, holding her phone up. "Guys, you won't believe this." Everyone turned. She pressed play on a video. It showed a crowd of people outside another small cafe in Chicago. A young woman was being interviewed. "We were inspired by the story from Brooksville," she said. "So we started our own kindness cafe here. Every customer pays what they can, and those who can't still eat for free." The video panned to a line of smiling people sharing food, hugging, laughing. The same energy, the same warmth that had started in Martha's Corner Cafe, spreading. Martha covered her mouth in shock. "Oh my lord." Becky's eyes shone. They even mentioned us by name. Said we started it all. Daniel felt his chest tighten, not with fear but with pride. It's happening, he said quietly. It's really happening. Claire grinned. Told you. Kindness spreads faster than greed. By afternoon, the cafe had reopened. The crowd was massive. Locals, journalists, travelers who had driven hours just to see the place where kindness began. Daniel stood behind the counter, serving coffee with Zoe perched beside him on a stool, greeting everyone who came in. A woman approached the counter, clutching a small brown envelope. She looked nervous. You don't know me, she said softly, but I saw your video with your daughter. It changed something in me. I was going through a dark time. But seeing how you stood up for what's right, it gave me hope. Daniel smiled gently. That means more than you know. She placed the envelope on the counter. There's not much inside, but I want to help. Maybe someone else needs it more. When she left, Daniel opened the envelope. Inside was $20 and a small note that read, "Pass it on." He looked up, eyes misty. It's starting again, he whispered. Becky leaned over his shoulder and smiled. Guess you've got work to do. As the afternoon wore on, people kept coming. Some brought money, others food, others stories. Every one of them left a piece of themselves behind. Proof that compassion was contagious. Meanwhile, Claire was sitting in her usual spot, typing away. What are you writing now? Martha asked. Claire smiled. The follow-up story. From one cafe to a movement. How kindness beat corruption. Martha grinned. That'll sell papers. Claire looked up, her expression soft. It's not about selling this time. It's about remembering. That night, when the crowd was gone and the cafe quiet again, Daniel stepped outside. The air was cool, the sky filled with stars. He sat on the curb, watching Zoe chase fireflies near the lamppost. Claire joined him, 2 mugs of cocoa in her hands. For you, she said. Thanks. They sat in silence for a while, the hum of the town filling the space between them. You ever think about what happens next? She asked finally. Daniel smiled faintly. I used to think I had to plan everything. Fix everything. But now, I think kindness has its own path. It finds the right people when it needs to. She nodded, sipping her cocoa. You're not wrong. Zoe ran up to them, holding a glowing jar filled with fireflies. Daddy. Look. They're lighting up. Daniel laughed. That's beautiful, Zoe. She grinned. Can I let them go? He nodded. Go ahead. She opened the jar and watched as the tiny lights drifted into the sky, scattering like stars. For a moment, the world felt still, peaceful. The darkness that had loomed over them for weeks was finally gone, replaced by something brighter, something real. Martha leaned out from the doorway, smiling. You know, Daniel, she said, I think your little girl started more than just a movement. She reminded us what it means to be human. Daniel looked at Zoe, his voice soft but steady. Yeah, he said. She reminded me too. The night deepened, the cafe lights glowing warm against the cool air. The world had changed, and so had they. But even as peace settled over Brooksville, none of them knew what awaited them next. Because somewhere in a distant city, in a dimly lit office, a new man watched the viral video. His eyes cold, calculating. He turned to his assistant. Find me everything you can on Daniel Carter, he said. If kindness can build this kind of power, I want in. The story wasn't over. Not yet. 2 months had passed since the storm that nearly tore Daniel's life apart. Brooksville had become a symbol of change, a town reborn from pain and prejudice into hope and unity. The cafe, once just a quiet corner shop, now stood as a living monument to kindness. A wooden sign above the counter read, Kindness served here daily. People from all across the country stopped by to see where it all began. Some came to share their own stories. Others came just to feel the warmth that radiated from the walls. But for Daniel, peace never came easily. He sat in his small office behind the cafe, the soft buzz of the old ceiling fan the only sound in the room. On his desk were piles of letters. Hundreds of them. Notes from strangers thanking him. Children sending drawings of Zoe. Families who had been inspired to help others. It was beautiful, but also heavy. Because behind all the love was one unsettling truth. Something new was growing out there, using his name. Claire knocked softly before entering. "You're up early again," she said, holding 2 coffees. Daniel gave a tired smile. "Couldn't sleep." She handed him a mug and sat down. "You saw the reports?" He nodded. "Yeah. Kindness Global Initiative. The so-called organization spreading in the cities. They're using our logo, Claire. They're taking donations. But the money isn't going where they say it is." Claire frowned. "You think it's connected to Hale's old network?" Daniel sighed. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just another man who saw how much good can attract attention, and decided to profit off it." Claire shook her head. "You started something pure, Daniel. People will always try to twist it. But that doesn't mean you stop believing in what you built." Before he could respond, Zoe's laughter echoed through the hall. She ran in, clutching a piece of paper. "Daddy! My drawing's on the computer." Daniel took her tablet. It was a social media page, his face, the cafe's name, but the caption made his stomach tighten. "Donate to the Kindness Global Fund. Changing the world through compassion." The post had over 100,000 likes. "That's not me," Daniel whispered. "They're stealing from people using my story." Claire leaned closer. "You have to expose them before they hurt more people." Later that afternoon, Daniel and Claire met with Agent Rhodes, the same officer who had helped uncover Hale's crimes. They sat in the cafe's back office, blinds drawn, papers spread across the table. Rhodes adjusted his glasses. "You were right. The account behind Kindness Global is tied to an offshore company in Dubai. They've raised over $3 million in the last month." Daniel's jaw tightened. $3 million. Using Zoe's face and my name. "We're building a case," Rhodes continued. "But it's tricky. The man behind it, Marcus Reddington, former associate of Hale. Ruthless businessman with ties to digital marketing networks. He's smart. He hides behind layers of legal ownership." Claire looked worried. "So he's using Daniel's story to rebuild what Hale started." "Exactly," Rhodes said. "And from what we can tell, he's planning to launch a global campaign in a week, turning your message into his brand." Daniel stood up, pacing. "He's poisoning the one good thing we created. We can't just wait." Rhodes frowned. "Careful, Daniel. He's dangerous. If you confront him publicly, he could spin it against you. You've already been through enough." Daniel stopped and looked at the agent firmly. "I'm not afraid of men like him anymore. They feed on silence. If we stay quiet, he wins." That night, Daniel recorded a video. Raw, simple, filmed in the cafe kitchen. The sound of clinking dishes in the background made it real. He looked straight into the camera. "My name is Daniel Carter," he began. "Many of you know me from what happened here in Brooksville. You've seen stories about kindness, forgiveness, and hope. But I need you to know, not everything with my name on it comes from me." He took a deep breath. "There are people out there using this movement for greed. They don't care about kindness. They care about control. So if you want to help, don't send money. Help someone in your town. Feed someone. Listen to someone. Kindness doesn't need a bank account. It needs a heart." When he finished, he uploaded it. Claire watched as it went live. "Do you think people will believe it?" she asked. Daniel smiled faintly. "They believed in kindness before they believed in me. I think they'll listen." If you enjoy this story, subscribe to the channel for more emotional and inspiring stories. The next morning, chaos exploded online. The video went viral overnight. Millions of views. News outlets picked it up. Headlines read, "Cafe Hero calls out fake kindness network." Reddington, however, didn't stay silent. He released his own statement, calling Daniel unstable and jealous. He claimed Kindness Global was the natural expansion of Daniel's message. Soon, social media was divided. Some believed Daniel. Others said he was bitter that he'd lost control. Martha turned off the TV in frustration. "They'll twist anything these days." Claire crossed her arms. "We have to fight back smartly. If we let emotions run wild, he wins." Daniel leaned against the counter. "Then we don't fight back with anger. We fight back with proof. 2 days later, Claire discovered something. She burst into the cafe holding her laptop. Daniel, you need to see this. He followed her to a table as she opened an encrypted file. One of my journalist friends traced Reddington's transactions. Guess where the donations went? Daniel frowned. Where? Claire clicked a file. A list of transactions appeared, showing millions funneled into shell companies linked to Reddington's name. Straight to his private accounts. Daniel exhaled. We have him. They sent the evidence to Rhodes immediately. Within hours, federal agents raided Reddington's main office. The evening news showed him being led away in handcuffs, trying to hide his face from flashing cameras. That night, Brooksville erupted with relief. The townspeople filled the cafe again, laughing, hugging, celebrating. But this time, Daniel didn't make a speech. He stood quietly near the window, watching Zoe hand out muffins to strangers, her laughter brighter than the lights strung above the tables. Claire approached him. You did it again, she said softly. He shook his head. We did. I just refused to let kindness be sold. She smiled. So what now? Daniel looked around, at the people smiling, at Martha pouring coffee, at Becky playing music near the door. Now, he said, we make sure kindness stays free. Weeks passed. Life began to calm again. The cafe expanded, not in size, but in spirit. People from other towns came to volunteer, to learn, to carry the message home. One morning, Daniel woke up to find an envelope on his doorstep. Inside was a handwritten letter that read, Dear Mr. Carter, you don't know me, but your story changed my life. I used to ignore people who needed help. Now, I run a small breakfast stand where anyone can eat, even if they can't pay. It's not much, but it's a start. Thank you for showing us what kindness can do. Tears filled Daniel's eyes. He folded the letter and placed it on the cafe's wall, next to hundreds of others. When Zoe came running to him, holding another one of her colorful drawings, he lifted her up and smiled. You know, sweetheart, I think we did something special. Zoe grinned. Because we were kind? He nodded. Because we were kind, and because we never stopped believing that it matters. The morning sun poured through the windows, casting golden light across the cafe. The hum of laughter, the smell of coffee, and the soft chatter of strangers filled the air. And in that moment, Daniel knew, kindness would outlive them all. Forever.